Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, hello everyone. So today we are from group 3. We are going to present you a topic. But before that, let me share the screen first. Can you see the screen, guys?
Yes.
It's clear. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so today we are going to discuss about chapter 3, written by Michael Evans. It is about code switching in computer-mediated communication, linguistic and interpersonal dimensions of cross-national discourse between school learners of French and English. Now, let's see who are the members. The first one is, there is Cesar, and then Dafinah Izzah Reksa, and then Fenny Duijaniarti, Fera Tri Andini, Hafizin, Yusuf Ibnu Sina, Nadia Dwi Kartika, and me, Nurhabiba Firdausy. There are some topics that we are going to discuss today. The first one is introduction, and then language choice or language switch, and the locus of code switching, focus on between code switching, and then the locus of code switching discusses about within code switching, and then the interpersonal function of learner code switching, and lastly, conclusion. Now let's start from the introduction that will be delivered by Nadia.
Okay, I want to explain about introduction and code switching in a computer-mediated communication for linguistic and interpersonal dimension of cross-national discourse between school learners of French and English. Code switching can be defined as the use of more than one language variety or styleby, a speaker within an utterance or discourse, or between different interlocutors or situations. So it is the study of language learner. Code switching has mostly focused on oral production in the classroom and of computer-related discourse analysis. Uh, is a consideration of this phenomenon in the textual exchange of language learner communicating within the e-learning environments. For example, code switching by university students in Germany and the United States using synchronous computer-mediated communication or CMC. Coder found that most of the participants were willing to find a solution to the dilemma of wanting to use their second language, having to use their first language, and the challenge of having to achieve a stable balance between these competing goals over the course of the project. Next slide. The asynchronous computer-mediated communication project called TikTok, like Table 3.1, TikTok Corpus. In this table took place mainly over a period of 4 years, 2001 until 2005, involving each year approximately 100 pupils, either of French as a foreign language in schools in England or of English as a foreign of second language in French countries, including France and Canada. Each year of a different cohort of pupils was involved in the project, which lasts from October to May. The participants were allocated to a group as shown in the table 3.1 below, consisting of approximately 10 pupils and only had access to messages within their group. Next slide. There are some impact on the validity and generalizability of the findings. Firstly, unlike bilingual speakers, the majority of the language learner on this project did not have equal access to both linguistic systems. Like code switching, this decision would therefore at least sometimes be related to learning issues such as second language, vocabulary gaps, or use of phrases learned in the classroom. Secondly, the temporal dimension of the asynchronous interaction may have implications for the nature of the code switching produced. Uh, the next material will be explained by Nurhabiba.
Okay, now we are going to talk about language switch and also language choice. Now let's define what is the meaning of code switching. So code switching can be said as a language alternation or lexical borrowing. So this meaning is said by Gafaranga and Torres on 2002. Or just like in sociolinguistic, code switching means that we use or we combine more than one language in one situation. The code switching is used in order to help the interlocutors understand what the speakers are saying, while language choice is potentially ambiguous. This is based on Bird on 1992, because just like in a condition when the students choose to speak using the second language, it might make the interlocutors of first language interpret that the students what is that try to be different with the listeners, while if the students try to use the first language, so what is seen by the second language interlocutors is that the students is not what is that doesn't have enough proficiency language. So talking about language switch and also language choice, the writer do the research. So here is the research about language switching and choice. So the researchers do this research by interviewing some students. The target of the interview is the L1 students of France. So this is the question of the interview. What about the idea of writing in English or French? I know your teacher always wanted you to write in French. Is that a good idea? So the response of the students is that it is a good idea, but they also thought about English as well, since they know that they always use French almost every day. So they think that if they learn and if they write using English, it might help them in order to understand both language. All right, the next material will be explained by Fera.
Okay, now I will explain about the locus of code switching. Code switching can take place on two planes of the discourse between post switching and within post switching. Now I will explain about between post switching. Between post switching is explicable in terms of the socio-pragmatic, like my friend explained before. You can see in this example, a quick reading of this sequence of exchange will pick out the fact that Annabelle, a French Coupon student, switched from English, her second language, in message 1 to French, her first language, and in message 2 to English, again in message 3. Jeffrey, an Anglophone student, write both message in French, his second language. However, beneath the surface of this textual behavior, it is possible to detect an underlying tension or dynamic that is motivating this particular instance of between code switching. The code switching in this example suggests that a more discordant and less stable impulse is influencing the verbal behavior, which is more explicable in terms of complementary seismogenesis. Here, Annabelle begins by writing a message to the group as a whole in English either. One can speculate as a friendly gesture to the English-speaking members of the group, or because she enjoys the opportunity to communicate in foreign language. Jeffrey replies to her in French. Annabelle also replies to Jeffrey by switching the French for more friendly. One could say that Annabelle's text is accommodating both interactionally in the sense of a friendly, open manner that seems to reach out to her interlocutor, and linguistically in the sense of complying to the interculator choice of language by switching to French. The brief switch back to English in the final words of the message, which is bye, suggests that despite these complications, her preference is to communicate in English. Jeffrey reminds insignificantly in French. He doesn't not reciprocate Annabelle accommodating moves, and he stick to his original theme of smoking rather than looking for alternative topics to develop the personal contact. As a result, Annabelle switches back to her medium of communication, English, and the exchange ends. So this example suggests that between post-code switching can be an expression of the same interactional and psychological process that are found in spoken dialect. The medium of communication is French or English, becomes a tool for interpersonal give and take. The pedagogical context is probably also a factor to this pattern of dialogic interaction. Jeffrey's apparent inflexibility reflects his compliance with his teacher request to make exclusive use of the target language, and his focus on smoking topic, with this being a recent topic in his French lesson. So the next material will be explained by Cesar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I will explain about speech accommodation theory. Speech accommodation theory refers to the behavior where interlocutors welcome speakers attempts to convergence or making one speech more like that of one interlocutor. Accommodation theory itself was developed by Howard Giles in the 1970s. This theory suggests that we adjust our speech to accommodate the person who we are talking to through convergence or divergence. This theory concerns the behavioral change that people make to attune their communication to their partner. Also, the extent to which people perceive their partner as appropriately attuning to them. The basis of the theory lies in the idea that people adjust or accommodate their style of speech to one and another. Accommodation theory elaborates that the human tendency to adjust their behavior while interacting. The reason behind this behavior is explained as to control the social differences between the interactions. This there is a slightly difference between the speech accommodation and code switching. Speech accommodation usually involve anything from adjusting how fast or slow you talk to how long you speak during each turn. But code switching refers to change in accent, dialect, or language. The example of speech accommodation theory is that when a junior employee in an organization is talking to the higher level employee, but the people tend to accommodate each other by realizing their differences in social status and ranking or position. Next slide, please. The next material will be explained by others presenters. Thank you.
Okay, so I will continue from my friend Cesar about the within post switchings. So the majority of code switches in bilingual asynchronous MC between language learners are created within post, more specifically locatable as intersentential or intrasentential switches. According to Puerto Ricans in New York, Public 1980, page 103, in her study of speech, she found that non-fluent bilinguals mainly code switching between sentences, as this to avoid the possibility of violating grammatical rule either of the two languages, which would be raised in intrasentential switching. The first thing to note is that the majority of intrasentential switches are switched to the first language and in most cases can be interpreted as representing recourse to the first language due to a gap in knowledge of the second language. As in the following example, you can see it is the history about the three orphans were raised adopted by their uncle. Can you define what is this? The creative is dutiful, the demonstration is facultative events. So on the example, ignoring for our purpose about the words, but actually I've underlined the words in there. There are history, three overline, and many more of the underline, but I don't think I can see it on the. Okay, so moving on. The whether the history word is a confused use of the English word story or borrowing of the French history is translated into English. The words that I have on underlines language instead of code switching in that they are words which belong to a different language to that of the remainder of the sentence in which they have been inserted. If one subtracts this type of first language borrowing, then as we shall see later, the ratio of interventional switches is very much in favor of the former. However, ascertain whether or not a sentence boundary exists between two segments of the text is not always straightforward, despite the presence of punctuation. So in the following example, you can see a from pupil switches into and out of French apparently in mid-sentence. Personally, I love this picture and I think it's very similar to the painting. But I'm not sure. It means randomly, I would say I like this picture, but I think it's been made by the Leonardo da Vinci or another actress, but I'm not so sure. That's a translate of the words she said. It can be concluded that from the example, there are intrasentential switch from English to French and to English again. And from the transliteration, people who just understand one language couldn't actually understand his word and couldn't decipher what it's the meaning of his word. Okay, move on to the next slide, please. Hello? Okay. So, okay, the definition, the second issue related to This within post switching is last about the definition what constitutes an intrasentential code switch. According to Pfaff, 1979, traditionally, intrasentential code switch is defined as a mixing of two languages within a sentence where the joins between the two or more different language segments are subject to syntactic, semantic, and discourse constraints. So look at the example of a single word utterance of first language. Maybe in a few years times we will work on computer all the time to retake lessons, but in the other hand, professor must stop to insane because the computer is going to do that at its place, like unlearnings. Although there are intrasentential switch, but the meaning of the sentence can still be deciphered and it did not interrupt the flow of language, which is English. And for just information, instinct means teaching. Okay, so but in the other hand, look at the example of longer intercalation of code switch tag. Hello, it's Moran. I don't have the time for reply, but yes, you can in this example, the language completely changed into French, and the difference between the two perspectives of intrasentential code switch in oral speech has been described by Muskin as insertional. The insertion of alien lexical or unknown lexical or phrasal category into a given structure. And the second one is alternation by Muskin. From a language learning point of view, the distinction if collaborated in learner discourse can provide a framework for investigation to cognitive basic of the code switching output. Okay, next slide will be explained by my friend Hafizin.
Okay. A third criterion, which is relevant to the analysis of intrasentential code switching, is the direction of the switch. Since in learner discourse, switching to the second language in mid-sentence, even if it takes the form of a single word insertion, is likely to be serving a function other than that of vocabulary gave filling. I'm sorry. It's raining here. Okay, next.
Okay, the next will be explained by Dafinah. Dafinah, please.
Okay, I will explain about the interpersonal function of learner code switching. So in here, longer code switches are motivated by discourse, considerations, parenthetical comments, asides, framing, metaphor, and etc. Rather than lexical one. Pfaff in 1979, page 315. Pfaff categorized these features of the discourse as extrasentential code switchings types. Code switching types, example, interjections, quotation, and idiomatic expression. And noted that they require less knowledge of the grammars. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm sorry if the rain sound is too loud, so I will continue. The concept of discourse-related code switching theorized by Aware in 1984, page 32 until 46, and applied to the context of language learner oral code switching by Lipsker and Daily Chain in 2004, and in this volume is a usable label with which to interpret a large portion of the code switching events in the
in this data are best understood from three interlocking perspectives, such as form, function, and addressivity. The textual form in which this use of code switching appeared in the data can be described as highlighting and appeared in various guises in the corpus within brackets. Example, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce it clearly. Jaurai une semaine vacancies for a half term in capital letters. Example, so vive les differences. And most commonly in quotation marks. Example, it's stressing. The functional objectives of this type of code switching are related to both form and content of the discourse. Regarding the former, the visual form of the highlighting serves a similar paralinguistic purpose as that of facial gestures, tone of voice, in adding expressive emphasis and meaning to the code switch speech. Okay, the next material will be presented by my friend.
Okay, the last conclusion, the asynchronous CMC structure impact on the use of code switching by the participant. The interpretation of this linguistic event should be based on considerations of key syntactic factors such as the linguistic locations and the directions of the switches. And there's associated meaning and socio-pragmatic functions. It is clear the code switching generated through this medium and in this context has considerable implications of language learning and pedagogy. And the application of code switching in the corpus is also an example of students who focus on the use of their language, thinking about the accuracy, appropriateness of or communication effect of the production uh, of the language itself. In other words, code switching actions are often not always self-reflective, which can be used by the evidence that linguistic behavior is closely related to the participants' reflective gaze at the communicative framework in which they operate. Participants they often change language in order to sharpen the interpersonal edge of the particular message of or the text for help in that language. I think that's all. Back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you for the speakers. And also thank you for your attention, guys. Now we are opening the Q&A session. Does any one of you want to ask?
Salsa, please.
Joran, please.
Yes, Salsa, please.
Okay, thank you, moderator. My name is Salsa Izzah. My last 2 digits student number is 04.
Yes,
My
please.
question is, based on your explanation, can you give me one aspect of the issue language choice?
Sorry?
Based on your explanation, can you give me one aspect of the issue language choice?
Okay, thank you so much. All right, another question, please.
Joran,
Dea,
please.
please.
Dea, please.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. So my question is, my name is Dea Permatasari. My question is, can any one of you give examples of code switching in Indonesia English?
What is your student number there?
78.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the last question.
Joran, please.
Yes, Fioren.
Okay, my name is Yoren. My last digit student number is 16. I want to ask about, in your opinion, what is the interpersonal function? Interpersonal function of code switching. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So those are the questions that we get. So for the speakers, I let you to answer the question.
I want to answer Salsa's questions. Based on your explanation, can you give me one aspect of the issue's language choice? I think one such aspect was the issues of language choice, and in order to pre-empty pedagogical assumption about the use of the first on or the target language by the pupils in their postings. The matter was explicitly addressed in my opening message for each strand. In this case, the conversation trained my guidelines to the participant on which language to use where as a follow. Try to do as much as you can in the foreign language, but don't worry if you switch into your own language. And the main things is to communicate. So in the case of the discussion strings, my own weekly messages alternated between French and English, and the pupils' use of their first language was openly sanctioned. So I think that's all. I think that's it. Did I answer your question, Salsa?
Yes, Nadia, you did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay. I will answer the second question. For short, for simple, the example of code switching in Indo or English you can see in Jakarta Selatan people. They use rule, they use switches and something like that. That is the example of code switching. So people from Jakarta Selatan that was trending before, that is the example of code switching. I'm sorry, it's raining here. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. It's clear enough.
Okay, the last question. The speaker, please answer it.
And what is interpersonal function of code switching in your opinion? So in my opinion, there are two interpersonal function of code switching. The first to accommodate the interlocutors. So in here we can accommodate the how the interlocutors speak and what language they use. And the second one is to distinguish Creole language, pidgin language, and the mother tongue of the interlocutor. So Fioren, did I answer your question?
Okay. Okay, Dafinah. Yes, you did. Thank you for your great answer.
Okay, thank you, Fioren.
Okay, all right. Does anyone wanna ask another question? Okay, thank you so much for all the speakers and also all the audiences. I hope that the topic that we explained to you is clear enough, and hopefully it is helpful. All right, that's all from our group. Thank you. Let me close. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.